Well, good day, everybody. This is the answers to the Q&A session that we put up on Facebook last Friday. Our internet at home, which you've probably seen now that we're back in France, is not so strong. We've got a few issues there and we're trying to sort it out. So it was impossible to answer them over the weekend. So we're in the office and now we can. The bad news is I've got 49 comments here. I'm not sure whether that's 49 questions or whatever. So I'll try and keep this rolling as quick as I can, and hopefully I've got a drink there, so it's fine. So today's interest was Avalish. If you're following the tracker, for some reason he got through a Stretcho de la Mer and on the other side and heading up, and then all of a sudden, boom, 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 and he starts heading back. And we were watching him very closely because he was heading back towards the coast, and it didn't make sense. He wasn't doing the right thing. And fortunately, half an hour ago, he finally turned around and heading the right way. And I think what may have happened, the wind was very light, and he may have gone to sleep. And then while it was light, it may have it swung right around, and he's literally going 180 degrees in the wrong direction, but may have probably been asleep. And when he woke up, because the water would have been reasonably flat out there, the way the area is that he's in, so it would have been flat water. He wouldn't have noticed a change in the waves, and he'd probably wake up and say, huh? and immediately tacked around. He's heading back the other way, so all is good. Anyway, the rest of it, you can see what's happening. It's been an exciting week, and it's going to be another exciting week this week. Okay, first question, Don. We've seen a lot of common equipment challenges. This is from Diane. In 2022, do you find these same issues to be consistent over the course of all the GGR races? Well, we've only had two. The first one, I was a little boy, and they didn't have the same sort of communications. But now when things go wrong, we know straight away. And certainly, the deal with equipment is it's part of your planning for the race. And yes, there are similar challenges with equipment. Generally speaking, though, the boats are prepared really well. Rigs are really good, sails are really good, deck layouts are pretty simple, things like that. It's all happening in a really nice way. Wind vanes are certainly a big challenge, a big issue, and critically important, because there's a couple of bits of equipment are vital to get to the end. And the sailors make their choices and they live by that for the rest of the voyage. And some of those choices, people learn from it. The sailors this time will learn from it. Some of them are coming back, and they'll come back stronger and better in 26. And certainly there's a lot of interest in 2026 from new sailors coming in. They'll be watching everything in intimate detail, and they'll learn from that as well. So yes, there's lots of little things. Anti-fouling, it was there in 2018. And it's here again in 22, and I think that shocked a lot of people. I think there was a complacency there that people just sort of forgot how serious it was in 2018, and then they got caught, and I was quite certain everyone will be looking at all the options and doing everything they can to make sure it doesn't happen for them in 26, but let's wait and see. So yes, there's similar issues this time as it was last time. Ed McDonald, wants to know if he'll ever meet his dream mermaid that does not have fish breath. Now, I had a chat to Zoltar, and Zoltar said you have to eat one of these and you'll never notice the fish breath. This is Nuri's hot chili sardines. Now, if you gob into these when you're about to go and meet your loved one, she won't have fishy breath because you'll have stronger fishy breath. And I hate chili, and I have to eat this very soon because everyone in the office has been given this tin by Goog before he left, and all of the other people that he's got in his team, they've got one of these, and at a set time, just as he rounds Cape Horn, we're supposed to eat it. And I've got to tell you, I'm dreading the thought. I do not do chili. Anyway, part of the course. So, Elizabeth, for power on board, apart from solar panels and diesel engine, what other sources are available to sailors? They can go wind generators, and you would have seen a few wind generators, and they can also go water generators like the Watton Sea. And wind generators are really good, but if they hit the water, you've got a problem. The blades can shatter, and some of them make noise, some of them don't, but it's a very, very good source of power. And one of the options, if you set your installation up right, is that when you think you're going into a big storm, the ultimate way to do that is to actually unplug your wind generator and get it down below, get it off the mount, and there's various ways you can do that. You can have a seesaw mount, pull the pin at the bottom, it seesaws down, unplug it, boom, take it off, put it below, put the mount back up again. There's no resistance then. and then when the storm's over, go out and put it up again. But in my BOC, I smashed 2 sets of wind generators and from knockdowns and rollovers and stuff. So they're vulnerable. Water generators really are super efficient, and there's some very good ones around now. And Watton Sea is one of the most popular. Puts out heaps of power. You can put it in and out of the water once your batteries are charged. But they too can be susceptible. Sometimes I look at them on the mounts and think, oh, you imagine a big wave completely enveloping the boat and it's sideways, and it can actually put a lot of load, and so they're a little bit vulnerable as well. The beauty of solar panels is they're hard to damage. Sometimes they fail, but they're hard to damage. You can also always have mobile solar panels down below that you can bring up on deck and plug them in later on. So they're good. In fact, that's mandatory. You have to do that as part of the GGR. Okay, from Elmelgin, hi Don, Nigel's my name. I'm a teacher, blah, blah, blah. In really bad storms, would you expect experienced sailors ever feel sick? Very rarely, if ever. In my round-the-world race, I was sick like 3 times in the whole year. The whole time I was out there. One was when I was head down, upside down, sort of under the engine at the start out of Sydney. That didn't put me well. I just started that day, so I felt pretty off. I don't even know whether I was sick, but I remember I was seasick. And there was 2 other occasions as well, and both were in similar situations, working in a storm and get disorientated. I got too hot, and all of a sudden you think, oh, blah, I feel crook, But again, I might not have puked, but you do that. But usually, special situation. Never take seasick tablets, never get seasick, blah, blah, blah. But I used to a lot when I started sailing. Most sailors get seasick, but as you get older, you get a bit more hardened, and as you get more sailing experience, you get a bit more relaxed, and there's a lot less fear of the unknown, and now you virtually never get seasick. So, okay, I know it's just in the movies, but relatively speaking, how close were the CGI images? This is in relation to Jessica's movie, Free Spirit, on Netflix. I wanted to know how real is it. Not so real, okay? Those CGI images, that big wall of water where she goes underwater 15 feet down for quite a few minutes, lights on, upside down, no water inside. That's not quite real either, all that stuff. But it's a light, fluffy entertainment for non-sailors, but that's not quite realistic. I mean, I've been in big seas, but they're hugely distance apart, and great big hills and valleys with breaking waves, and you very rarely, I've seen them on videos in the North Sea when you get wind against current and shallow distance, you can get vertical walls of water. You might have seen some of the videos with ships, but they're extremely rare types of seas in special occasions. Southern Ocean is just big and nasty, and the worst bit's when you get 2 going across, so it's not quite as it's shown in those movies. What's the most exhilarating sailing you've ever done? Exhilarating is a funny word, some of the exhilarating stuff that happens when you're out of control. And even on my little Mini last year or the year before when we went across the Atlantic, there was occasions there where I'm hanging on looking at my big asymmetric, and there's big squalls and there's more wind than you think, and you're screaming along thinking, is that going to burst before I get it down, and how can I get it down because it's too much, too dangerous to get it down. I should be right, I'll keep it going for a bit longer. That's really exhilarating because it's all like, whoa. It's not always about big seas and storms being exhilarating, and everything is different. So and I'm sure every sailor's got plenty of stories, so quite good fun, and liking the ride. Glad you're having fun, Nigel. Okay, next one. Ted Ryman. Zoltar told me that Kirsten will win the race. Wouldn't that be great? You got to believe in Zoltar. So, yeah, that's cool. Hi, Don from Laura. I'm curious to know more about the twin headsail setup. Any idea of the sailcloth material? Well, it's normal sailcloth, okay? It's Dacron sailcloth. That's all you're allowed to use. It could have been tri-radial Dacron, which is woven a little bit stronger for different bits, but I think it was just normal Dacron, okay? Pros and cons, very good system. In fact, I'm thinking of having one made for my Explorer in the Ocean Globe race, because it is very, very good for downwind in the Southern Ocean, better than Spinnaker because you're not going to lose it as easy. It's tougher, it's easy to set up, easy to pull in, things like that. So there are lots of pros and cons. We've gone through this at length in I think question answer about three sessions ago, explaining the whole system, how you set it up with sheets and so on. And you can watch some of the videos that Kirsten's got. So it is more stable than a spinnaker. Kirsten's been running with twin poles and twin headsails quite often. I don't like that because there's always going to be, it's never going to be dead square. Depending on where your mainsail is, if you've got your main out, well, that creates a sort of a windward sail and a leeward sail. And the problem with having a pole on the leeward sail is that's the one that's going to hit the water, and that's the one that's going to break when it hits the water. Even though hers are up really high, excuse me, which is a good plus, but I would have probably, and in fact I've done this in my BOC, one was down and I broke a pole very quickly on the second leg when the one pole rolled in, so I stopped doing that straight away. So I prefer to run, even running twins like that, I would have one pole out on the windward side with the windward sail and the other one just going loose. So creating less stress on the self-steering gear, it's a bit hard to say, but yes, if you're pulling from the front, the boat is steering even better rather than the main, and you'd progressively get less main, and you'd leave the head sails up doing all the work. You're reefing the main as the wind increases. So it is a system worth looking into. Simona, hi Don. Those notes you make on windy when something is happening, I can't see them on the GGO. I can see them on the newsletter, but I can't see them on the tracker. Yeah, and can we put them on the tracker? No, you can't. Basically, that's a screenshot of the tracker, like the image from the real live 24-hour day tracker, and then I put it in on Photoshop. You just put a box in, put arrows and stuff, and it just gives you a graphic to explain what's going on. But we can't do that real time live, during the tracker updates. So sorry about that. Peter Gibbon, Godgens. Hi Don, am I correct in saying Kirsten will be the first South African to circumnavigate the globe non-stop? I'm not sure. I can't confirm that, but I'll tell you how you can. The official records now, and this was exciting news, this happened as a direct result of the GGR in 2018. Barry Pickthall was working with us, and we got involved with the International Association of Cape Horners, and there was a lot of talk again about who's got the records. I met a guy long time ago in '84 called Nobby Clark, who used to be the sort of unofficial record holder. He's an amazing guy. Had a drink with him one time, and really blew me away. With his knowledge and his own history during the war and stuff. Anyway, but he kept the records for a long time, produced books and so on. And of course, Nobby passes away, and then for a while there, Robin Knox Johnson took up the banner, and he was trying to keep up with the whole thing of all the records to remember the number of people and who they were and what time they went round and so on. And then since then, it got so fast and so thick with all the Vendée Globes and all that sort of stuff that was impossible. It just went crazy, and everyone started guessing. A couple of hundred, couple of this, whatever. Anyway, Barry suggested to the Cape Horners that they should get this happening, and he's put in months and months of his own personal time with the guys in the Cape Horners. And about a year or so ago, a bit more than a year actually, they finally had it pretty much up to date, maybe a bit more than a year, and we let it go. Barry said, let's get this out there and show people, and then those that think they missed out on the list could then call in and say, hey, what about my circumnavigation? I did this. And so now there is a very accurate and super detailed list of everyone who's ever sailed solo around the Horn via a circumnavigation. So you get a double whammy, because you can become a Cape Horner just from doing one leg, say from an island in the Pacific, you sail around Cape Horn and finish off in Punta del Este in Uruguay or something. It's got to be a voyage, I think, of at least 3,600 miles, I think, something like that. If you do that, you can be a member of the Cape Horners Association, but realising that the real deal is when you do a circumnavigation, they keep the records of the solo circumnavigations with stops and solo circumnavigations non-stop, and the numbers are quite interesting. I had a look the other day just because I always wondered where I was when I did mine. I thought I was 92, and that's about right, but that was a combination of with stops and without stops. So it turns out that I actually did the 66 solo circumnavigation with stops. Okay, that was my number. That was back in 1990. But for now, there is actually 329 solo sailors that have all sailed solo around the world via Cape Horn. And that's a pretty big number, because you see usually people are saying 200 or 250 or whatever. But you can split that then into categories, and there's 151 solo sailors that have gone around with stops, and there's 178 now that have gone solo non-stop, which is amazing. And of course, that's thanks to the Vendée Globe and even the Golden Globe. We put 5 on last time. So the solo non-stop is becoming more stronger than the solo with stops. So and then the women's side, there's actually only 7 women that have done solo circumnavigations via Cape Horn, assuming Kirsten finishes. So she'll be in that group of 7 women. Kay Coddy being the first to do that in 1988. Of course, she was the first woman solo sailor non-stop, unassisted, and so on. And that's we've got a trophy here from Blackmores in Australia, a beautiful trophy called the First Lady Trophy. That's the name of Kay's boat, and that goes to the first GGR entrant to finish. It hasn't been presented yet. We gave a smaller version to Susie as the first sort of woman to go around in the GGR, and unfortunately she didn't finish, Susie Goodall. So that big trophy, which is a perpetual trophy, is up for grabs. No woman has actually finished the GGR solo, so she'll be it, and it'll bring the house down. If she can manage to achieve that, touch wood, it'll be huge. So keep at it, Kirsten, and go for it, Abolish. Give her a run for her money. Okay, that was a long answer, but anyway, interesting stuff. So if you go to International Association of Cape Horners.com, that'll get you there, and you'll get to just hunt on the top list, and you'll get to the list. It's quite fascinating. It's a lot of background, a lot of detail there on everyone that's ever done a solo circumnavigation. Look me up, I'm there. So's Jessie Martin, and so's Jessica Watson. Anyway, yeah, I digress. But it's an interesting read. It's fantastic, and it's a real credit to Barry and the organisation. I should also throw in a thing here. Les Sables d'Olonne is the home of the Cape Horners Hall of Fame, and every year now, they had the big one last year when the GGR started, and actually you'll see every year there's more people that go into the Hall of Fame. So some big names in that. Okay, Elizabeth. I didn't answer the question. I got no idea whether Kirsten is going to be the first South African. You'd have to look it up in the list. Elizabeth, how do the sailors navigate when there are many days of overcast weather? Using a sextant is not feasible. That's exactly right. If you can't see the sun, you can't get a position fix at all, and so you use DR and dead reckoning navigation. So every 3 or 4 hours, or every hour if you want, you log your course, keep up with your course, and your course is sort of speed and direction. So you put that in the log all the time, and you can plot that on your chart to work out approximately where you're going. And your dead reckoning position will get less and less accurate as the days extend and extend and extend, because there'll be little errors all the way. So the accuracy gets worse and worse, but it's not uncommon to go for 5-6 days without a sun sight. And as long as you're out in the ocean and you're not closing the coast, it doesn't really matter. You sort of know roughly where you are, and then you get a sight and you're okay. So yeah, but if it's clouds, there's no chance to get a fix from Celestial Navigation. Okay. Sun loves sailing. Thanks for everything, Don. Do I remember correctly, was Uruguay Gate a thing in this year's race and is discontinued and closed, or was it only in the 18 race? No, it was first time for Punta del Este in Uruguay was this year. It was set up on the assumption we might have had a huge title sponsor. We don't have any sponsors other than our fantastic host port here and logistics partners, Les Sables d'Olonne. They're our real partners. They've invested a lot of money in the race, but we still don't have a title partner. So therefore, there wasn't the demand to get the footage and get it out as quick as we might have needed to, and that became obvious after Cape Town. We didn't have the demand for instant access to the footage coming off the boats, and it gets very complicated by Uruguay. A lot less people spread over a huge amount of time. We couldn't afford to be there, so we cancelled that straight after everyone had got through Hobart. And so for 2026, it'll be the same. It'll only be Lanzarote, Cape Town, and Hobart. We wouldn't instigate that unless we had some serious demand to go into Punta. Petra, where's Elliot? Elliot's in Western Australia still, selling his boat. He's parting out some of the specialist GGR equipment from his boat. He's really missing the GGR. He's really feeling the bite now. It's sunk in that he's not in the GGR, and I won't say he's doing it tough. In fact, a lot of the entrants that have retired previously from the GGR We make contact and we have big chats about this, but they, they're not struggling, but they're really wow. It's a huge letdown. And I explained to them it's not just retiring from there. Even if you finish, the ones that finish, it's like a huge shock when you finish. Your whole life has evolved around the GGR, and then when you finish, if you're sailing to Les Barcelona, it's like, huh? It's like a shock there as well. So it's that demanding psychologically and physically, that it becomes part of you. And when that stops, it really hits you hard. Elizabeth, how do the sailors get sleep, especially in heavier weather? Staying up all night, feasible at night, but they have to get some shut-eye sometime. Do they power nap 30 minutes? And do they usually sleep in spurts unless they are in the doldrums? In real storms, do they stay below after taking sails down, etc.? Well, first of all, in the Southern Ocean, you hardly ever go outside. The only time you go outside is if you've got to do something. So you spend a huge amount of time inside the boat looking out the windows, right? Usually they'll go outside once or twice a day to check everything, but that may just be a visual check, and so that varies. Sleep-wise, the worst time to try and get sleep, in my experience, is always in the doldrums when there's no wind. It's really hard to sleep then because you're always looking for wind shifts. The boat won't steer itself. The wind vane won't work. So you're just hanging out goggle-eyed, just waiting for breeze. I mean, it's so much better when there's breeze in the Southern Ocean and things like that. Everyone has a different sleep pattern, but don't believe everything you read. I find it hard to believe that some people can go for days and days and days and only have 2 hours sleep. But you can certainly have quick cat naps. You get into that routine, you sleep differently. When your body's getting tired. It's very important that you don't get too tired, because it's like a line there. You can come up and down to the line and catch up with your sleep really easy. But if you start to get too tired and you get down here, it's really hard to get back to that line. So as soon as your body's telling you need sleep, you must sleep, you've got to just get that sleep. So you've got to slow the boat down if you have to. Just get out and crash out for as long as it takes to catch up. Otherwise, you're going to go downhill fast. So everyone's different on how they cope with that. But usually it's common sense. And when you talk to the guys, you usually find they're getting 6-7 hours sleep a night, and most of that, a lot of that will be at night time. So it may not be what most people think. What's the black substance on the transom of Minnehaha in recent photos? This is just slime and mould. The boat's been underwater for so long. It's not barnacles, fortunately. It's just growth, marine growth. Like slime, it's like having a jetty. You look at the side of the piles in the jetty, they'll get growth on it. And she's got that amazing one on the bow. The underwater profile of the Cape George 36 is really cool. It's different than all the other boats. If you look at the bow of a Cape George 36 and the buoyancy that's got up there, right, compared to a Russell 36 with a sharp bow cutting back like this, they're cheese and chalk. So the Rustler is actually spearing through the waves, right? But the Cape George 36 is so much buoyancy in the bow that there's always this like bow wave like on a square rigger, and it's pushing a lot of water, but it's creating a lot of buoyancy, which is really keeping the waterline length going there and all sorts of things. And that slime on the bow was very obvious when she got to Hobart. And so it's sort of both ends, because as she's going through, she's got a squared off transom, the waves roll, and it's just that a lot of that part of the hull is underwater. So it's basically slime. Hi Donna, this is from James. After all the wind vane issued in 2018, when we saw how crucial they are you surprised with the problems so far in GGR 22 relating to them? The amount of spares carried by competitors? Well, first of all, there's problems, but there's only a couple of boats that have had problems, right? And first of all, you got to know that wind vanes are a mechanical device, right? And anything that's mechanical, and believe me, I used to fly a helicopter and know a helicopter, you're just waiting for something to break. Maintenance is really important. Every nut, bolt and washer, the manufacturer can do everything they can to build it right, but then you have to be there and watching and maintaining. You can't just stick it on and expect it to go through 5 million wave cycles without having an issue. So maintenance is really important. Checking nuts and bolts, marking every bolt with something before you leave so you can see visually if it's starting to come undone. Making sure you've done everything right in the very beginning, that's the best thing you can do, and certainly set off with everything in really good condition. Now, if we look at some of the events that have caused failures, like the guys that have had to retire, Pat had to retire because when he put the Aries on the back of the boat, he didn't replace all the bearings to new. It was a used Aries. It was stuck on the back and all looked pretty good and looked right, but the main bearings weren't changed, and he regrets that now and admits to it. He said, "Oh, jeepers," and that cost him his race. In the case of Damien, I think everyone knows the story. There were some modifications there, and it was, the failures were effectively. Rudder failures were due to modifications that were made that non-standard. That's trying to do the right thing. There's nothing wrong with that. Trying to, in their opinion, make it better, but unfortunately it didn't work. And then sadly, when he lost his rudder, his safety line, the last one, the safety line that you have on there to catch the rudder when it's gone, it had come loose, and Damien hadn't noticed that. So that was a human error, and errors happen. It's an accident, and so that was really unfortunate for Damien. I mean, it was just so sad. But anyway, that's a learning curve, and so and then the next one, Abolish has been having challenges. Some might say that vane might be too small for a Russell 36, a powerful Russell 36, because it appears that the blades, when they're breaking, are just breaking. It appears that the pendulum itself might be okay, but the blade where it's in there. So who knows? I'm not saying that's the cause. We don't know yet what's going through the blades, but it's a choice that Abolish made to use that vane. It's lighter than having an Aries on the back, maybe, or even a hydrovane or whatever it is, and it's fast acting. Servo pendulum systems are very good. There's no problem there, especially when the rudder's right at the back of the boat on a Russell 36, because when it's on the back, you've got good steering from the ship's rudder. But some of the boats, like in Tapio's case, his rudder is halfway down the boat underwater in the middle, and it's not a very effective rudder. And I know for a fact when he put the hydrovane on the back of the boat, rather than use a servo pendulum system in 2018, the change was dramatic. He said the performance of the boat sailing with the auxiliary rudder right at the back was dramatically different. It was well worth the effort. And so there's personal choices skippers make besides the design of their boat and what might fit better, a pendulum like the Wind Pilot or a pendulum like the Aries versus a hydrovane with an auxiliary rudder and so on. So it's kind of interesting. A number of spares carried. Well, obviously you can't have too many spares. It was unusual. Simon had hydrovane storm damage. It was a crash and smashed a casting, which was a huge load. It has happened before with hydrovane, but rarely at sea. It's happened in marinas and stuff like that. There's been, I think, 3 reported cases where those castings have smashed, but every one of those cases was actually in port. There weren't any others that happened at sea, so that was bad luck for Simon. And he took some spares. He had spare vanes, the wind vanes and stuff, and a few bits and pieces. But if you had the whole vane, right, which is quite heavy, then you could have substituted the casting. But that's personal choices, and that'll always be the case with sailors. You just got to decide how far do you go. You look at what Robin took on his boat. He had a lot of stuff. So it's all very interesting, and that's part of the challenge of the GGR. Another long answer. Okay. Can any brand of wind vane, from Timothy, can any brand of wind vane be used for the GGR? Say the Cape Horn vane by using. Thanks. Glad to see Abolish further away. So yes, any vane can be used in the GGR as long as we deem it to be okay after the entrant has submitted to us a full proposal as to why they believe it'll work for the GGR. In other words, we consider the wind vane to be safety equipment. We've got to be certain that the evidence is produced to us that it has a good track record to get all the way around the world and so on. And so there's various opportunities, and currently the wind vanes that are approved for the GGR include a GGR version of the Monitor wind vane. Right? It was specially modified after the previous GGR in 2018 because there was a lot of failures that caused a lot of problems. The Cape Horn version now is approved for the GGR. Wind Pilot is approved for the GGR, which is a cool vane. Aries is approved, hydrovane is approved, and that's all we've had submitted. Okay, so in 2026 we may have some others there, but it's up to the entrant to produce all the material to us, and we'll review it. And we'd very rarely say no. In the case of the Cape Horn, the first proposal put to us, we said no, right? And this is the reason why, because you didn't explain this and you didn't explain that, you didn't explain that. So then the entrant had to go away and get more information for us, and some numbers and bits and pieces, and came back and we reviewed it and says, okay, that looks cool, so we approved it. And that's the process that we go through for wind vanes. Very important piece of kit. And there's going to be some changes in 2026 race because of what we've learnt from this one. And one of them is that effectively any modifications from standard of any wind vane has to be notified to the manufacturer, right, to get their approval. If the manufacturer says no, you basically won't be able to make those modifications because it caused a problem in this race. So there's a few little things there that we'll be looking at. Next one. Julius, I hope Elliot sees the Zoltar reference. Oh yeah, he loves Zoltar. Zoltar, missing Elliot for sure. Question, why did Simon Kerr go so far north for his landfall and repairs? Basically because there's nowhere else to go. There was nowhere else to go. There's a very hostile coast down there, not a lot of civilization and all the rest of it. It's the only place to go. So it was too hard and dangerous for him to go south and into Ushuaia and things like that. So that was pretty self-explanatory. Alan de Morcan, hi Don, how do you explain the gap of around 2,000 miles between VDH course and speed and everything in 2018? Kirsten, 2022, Cape George, or more than a fortnight. Cape Town, Fruin drops, blah blah blah. Severe knockdowns. Does the shift from July to September explain the difference? No, the difference is a different course. That's the bottom line. We certainly started later, and so there's a combination of reasons that Jean-Luc is faster than Kirsten, say. First one is, even in 2018, he probably might have been faster than Kirsten because he's a very good sailor, and his boat was prepared really well. And he understands the weather like Kirsten. Kirsten's very good. So, you've got to accept that fact. Jean-Luc was pretty quick. But 2022, we've got a different course. All the boats had to go around Trinidad in the South Atlantic, whereas Jean-Luc was able to cut down through the middle of the South Atlantic high, shorten the distance, and possibly pick up a few days there. He certainly picked up, probably 4 or 5 days or more by not having to go into Cape Town. But now Cape Town is a mark of the course, and it always will be. So he got around without going to Cape Town. He had to come into Hobart, but he was able to use his fuel. So Jean-Luc motored quite a long way into Hobart, and he motored a fair bit of the way out of Hobart. And that was allowed in the rules back then, but now there's a time penalty for the use of fuel. So the entrants are, going in, and I'd say it's probably, that could cost them anywhere around 4 days or something as well. So you can see time going there. The no-go zones were the same, so the rest of it is the weather. Yes, we started later to get better weather in the Southern Ocean, and better weather can sometimes be slower weather. So there's too many factors. You can't compare the two realistically. He's on the tracker just as a point of reference and a bit of fun. Chris Bowen, can you explain typical historic routes of Cape Horn back to France, navigating the St. Helena High, the doldrums? Okay, well, I've done that on the daily trackers. I've shown people that getting around Cape Horn and getting back up into north of 40 degrees south is you're still in the Southern Ocean, so you've got to work the highs and low pressure systems as they come across over the top of South America. So that's very demanding. After that, you're into a trade winds, but the angle of the trade winds, depending on the season, vary, and so it could be quite nice trade wind going up to the doldrums, okay, or it could still be a little bit forward of the beam. But usually, it's not a bad ride. Once you hook into them, if you're far enough out in the Atlantic, you can ride that really nicely. If you're pinned into the coast, like happens to Jean-Luc, you see it, it's a little bit harder. It can be a bit harder. Then you go through the doldrums, and you want to be as far over to the east as you possibly can, because when you get on the other side of the doldrums, when you go through, the wind's going to be trades again, but you're going to be really, it's not on the nose, but it's hard work. It's pretty brutal. It starts off quite warm as well, and you've got all this spray over the boat, and you're working that sort of trade winds to get around the pressure systems going north, and you usually end up going through the Cape Verdes, and then you've got to work out at what time you curve around and head towards Les Sables d'Olonne, and that may take you quite north before you turn the corner. But it's you can try and sneak in along the coast of Portugal, but that's too tough. You're better off staying out usually. So there is a distinct track. Kirsten knows it really well, right? I have no doubt she will optimise her course. She's done that voyage quite a few times already. And Abelish is pretty good as well, so that could be quite a bit of fun, so watch this space. Okay, John Pinto, two questions. One, what happened over the last 13 years with Pink Ella's Pink Lady? Are there any further waypoints between Cape Horn and the finish? First of all, there's no more waypoints in the finish. Pink Lady was sold to the Australian government. It was quite a big story when she arrived. It inspired a huge number of people, millions and millions all around the world. And so they bought the boat, and it's now currently available for everyone to see in the Brisbane Maritime Museum. They've been having a bit of trouble with or challenges with the COVID. When COVID came, their income dropped and blah, blah, and no one's ever got enough money. But the boat is being looked after well in the Brisbane Maritime Museum. She's still there. Quite a story is Jessica and Pink Lady. Okay. Thomas, what is the reach of the sailors? What do each of the sailors do to stay fit? Good question for the weekly call, but everyone does something different. Elliot used to do dancing every now and then, and others do sort of press-ups and sit-ups and just move their body. And the biggest thing is your lower body. Your upper body is doing stuff with winches and people getting sore elbows and things like that. But your lower body that needs to work. And I think everyone's just doing what they can on the boat. You can imagine that. Squats, sit-ups, whatever. It varies, and I'm not sure what each of them are doing in detail. Ajay, what does Zoltar think of onboard mast top sat-link webcams on the yachts that allows the followers and absolute most sports look at big audience and close reactions? GGR could potentially avoid the gates. Well, it'll never happen. You got to remember. Where's the power going to come to operate this stuff? Where's the money going to come from to put it there? Where's the money going to come from to transmit all the gear to go off? And it's against the ethos of the GGR. The GGR will never, ever have live video footage coming off the boat. There is a sense of isolation. You got to remember that the race is there for the entrance first and foremost, and that's the attraction for the followers as well. They get it. You sail away and they're completely isolated, completely chopped off. The best that'll ever happen is you might occasionally get some satellite photos coming off the boats, but if we ever had live video stuff coming from the boats, believe me, it will put you off. It's not what the GGR is about. The film drops are quite special. There's a high intense emotion when they come back and see people for the first time. There's plenty of other events that you can watch live and so on, but it's certainly not the GGR. The GGR is back to the 60s, but as I say, we're still, technology's changing fast, and 26 there may be photos coming off the boat, but then they'll be only restricted photos. So you can get too much of everything sometimes, and the GGR goes for a long time. So, okay. Elliot Smith will go down in history with his references answering a hard question. Yeah, it was pretty cool. I'll never forget that. That's the reason he did the GGR, because Zoltar told him to. How are the water issues affecting the entrance? It's a big problem. Gug just came up the other day and gave his listing as 40 litres of water left. He's only approaching Cape Horn with the emergency water, 9 litres. It's not a lot to go around, and that's pretty tough. He has a manual desalinator there, which if he breaks the seal, it's going to cost him a few days' time penalty, but you want to try and do it if you can without. So he's out to catch rain. Ian's okay. He's got plenty of water to go the rest of the trip. And Kirsten seems to be okay. Abelish is running out of water as well, so he'll be keen to get north and try to get in the doldrums and catch someone. Zoltar, what will Elliot do next? Zoltar, what will Elliot do next? No answer yet. It's coming. So maybe go and find a Zoltar and ask him. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Deborah, okay. Ask Zoltar if Peter told racers their positions when they would get weather updates from him. No, Pete's pretty good. This is in the Guardian. Peter doing the radio, Passage Guardian, doing the radio reports to entrance. He knows what the rules of the GGR is, and he abides by them exclusively. So he doesn't give any positions at all, and he's like a relay situation, particularly for weather and passing messages to family and bits and pieces. But he's not totally active in other aspects, but does a great job, and the entrants love it, which is very cool. Ray, hello. To be nice to know what sextants are being used by the competitors. Thanks in advance. We will be doing a big survey at the end of the race. We'll ask all the entrants to fill them in, and there'll be a compilation of all sorts of information, right down to how many rolls of toilet paper did they take, how many pairs of undies, what sextants they had, what logs they had, what worked, what didn't, things like that. So you'll have to wait for that. I've got no idea of what types of sextants. It's varied, many and varied, from plastic to plastic to very expensive Cassas and Plath and all sorts. Okay, Leo. Rio is the final stop. Photogate makes a lot of sense to me. Less of a detour. So, like Friendy, we'll draw South American interest. GGR. Why Uruguay? And what about Rio? For certain? Nah, we're not going to stop up there again. So, no more stops that side. It's kind of cool to also allow from Hobart all the way back to Les Sables d'Olonne. That's like 13,000 miles or something. Excuse me, 14,000 miles of one leg. Of nothing, so I can relate to that. Michelle, hi Don, would love to see some more of the onboard footage of Sailor. Yeah, so would we. We had some challenges getting them out of Cape Town for a start. We've now finally just now got it out, thanks to Jan and all the others down there, Eve and so on, everything you've been doing and stuff. And we've finally downloaded. There's so much footage, it takes ages to download. And it'll all be sent to the documentary filmmakers, Fathom, and then we'll start getting some of that up in the weeks ahead. So stand by for that. It's about to happen. Although we missed out on getting Guy Waits' footage. He didn't drop him in Hobart, so he took off without him. So, but anyway, that's cool. Glenn Parker, hi Don. As a very average day sailor who is never out of sight of land, a dash below to get a drink or a bite to eat takes seconds. I'm interested to know how much time a GR might spend below. Ooh, a lot, half their life or more than half their life. In fact, most of the day is spent down below because it's sunny up the top and you get sunburn, and then it's cold up the top, you get cold. So most of the time is spent down below unless it's good enough to go outside. And you're very rarely hand steering for fun. Sometimes you are if you want to go fast with a spinnaker or something, but usually they're under wind vane all the time, and they go up there when they've got things to do, but the rest of the time you're usually down below. So it's pretty much to your imagination. Please give us a weather systems 101 on the passage from... Oh, we've already done that. And you can follow the tracker. I give quite a lot of information on the weather. That's from me. No more questions, but I missed out. We got a lot more questions stuck in after that. Philip, with water being critical, does the notice erase allow filter medium, carbon filters, UV, etc., to keep water clean? Yes, all that's allowed. We strongly recommended they took silver tablets. Like Catadan makes some good tablets that you can use to purify your tanks and so on. But yes, some of the entrants have various filters to filter the water, so it's all free for the entrant to do any of that. Legin, hi again. Today's tracker 19 of the 2, that was yesterday, when talking about the Atlantic sailing and technical challenge ahead for the races, what makes them choose a specific route? Reading the weather maps, I suppose, but is there a major element of luck involved in the thing? No, there is you can do a lot of your own plotting before the race even starts. Just look at your routing charts. There's charts there. Jimmy Cornell does one, I've got a set over there, of all the latest weather routing charts, which for every month of the year and every position in the ocean, you'll get your average wind speed, the usual wind direction, where it's going to be blowing from most, and what's your likelihood of storms, and what's the average current. So you can actually plan the most favourable track around the world before you even start. And the entrants that are clever will have already done that. Jean-Luc, for instance, in 2018, spent a huge amount of time and paid a bit of money to have some of the best weather routers in the world look at the weather systems and look at the polar diagrams of the boat and come up with a weather plan, irrespective, for the whole race, all the way around the world, before he even left. So he had this book about that big of all these potential scenarios. And so there is a decision to be made. When you get around Cape Horn, you have to decide where you're going to go. You're going to leave the Falklands to starboard or leave it to port? Are you going to go up the inside straight up, or are you going to go out wide? And that can have a big bearing on what happens. But considering that if you make a choice to go out wide, for instance, where Kirsten's going, you can only get, it's going to take you a couple of weeks to get through all that, and you can't get a forecast for a couple of weeks, so you don't know what's coming. So you've got to use the law of averages and say, right, well, that's the best for me. I'm going to go there for now, and then I'll work it out as it happens. So that's where the luck then comes in, because you can't, everyone's got to get a bit of luck, but that happens, and so, but you need to have a sound understanding of the principles rather than just turn the corner and say, oh, I think I'll go that way. It's not a good move, because you can certainly look at the law of averages and give you the best way around. And even in Jimmy Cornell's book about voyaging around the world and so on, he gives you suggestions if you're cruising and stuff on where you should go, and that's pretty useful information. It's all available on pilot books as well, and Ocean Passage of the World and things like that. So there's a lot of information you can have to increase your luck. Okay. Here we go. Sfaja. I was wondering what kind of insurance the entrants have for these boats and themselves. Did Tapio have insurance on the boat, loss of the boat? They all have to have. All the entrants have to have liability insurance. We have a liability insurance cover for the race, so they need that for €3 million as a minimum. And then some of the boats. In fact, I'm not sure. I never. We don't know who was insured and who wasn't. In 2018, quite a few of the boats were insured, and like RA's boat was insured, but there wasn't a big payout at the end, and blah blah blah. And this time round, I've never asked Tapio whether the boat's insured. I couldn't tell you, but and I couldn't tell you whether whether Kirsten's insured. Insurance is a funny thing, but it's very hard to find insurance for a single-handed boat in the Southern Ocean in the GGR. That's all I could say. And there's not many that would be insured, but I couldn't tell you who. Okay, how does it work with immigration when a skipper? This is from John. Skipper needs to stop somewhere like Simon did in Chile. Is there special immigration rules? Absolutely. You can't just stop anywhere. For Australia, for instance, every entrant had to have a visa to get into Australia, even though they weren't going to stop, because Australia is very particular being an island with biosecurity and this, so that was part of the agreement to come in and sail right into Kingston Beach and then head out. They could only do that if they already had the visa. So if they stepped ashore, they'd be in big trouble, but then you could do the customs and clearance and done. So in the case of Guy, it's very easy. Well, he's British anyway, so it didn't matter. But who else? Jeremy, he already had a visa to get in, and then we did, as the organiser, we did all the pre-alerts. As soon as we had news someone was going into Australia, we tell Customs, Border Force, Immigration, Biosecurity, all that stuff. They all know, they monitor you in, you can't do anything, it's all under observation, and it all works well. Same for Chile, Seb was involved with that, with Simon, notifying all the authorities, making sure it was all set up so he had a clear entrance in and out, and they were particularly helpful because Australia's challenging, and also Chile and South America can be challenging as well, but they were very helpful, and it wasn't so bad. Same with Cape Town and so on. But yeah, there's the same process if you're a cruising boat. Samantha, will the GGR shop be up and running soon? Okay, we were just talking about this. What we're going to do is we're going to do a package of gear, because the biggest problem is sorting all this stuff in and getting the stuff together and getting it out at a reasonable price, and we just don't have the people to do it. And then we've been looking at doing a shop. There's so many internet things, just the legal side was just massive. So what you'll see come up shortly is a process where if you're going to buy something, you have to buy 2 hats and 2 t-shirts. Okay, it's a package, no more, no less. You can add more. So the minimum is 2 hats and 2 t-shirts. Okay, and then if you want to put 2 beanies in, you can put 2 beanies in. If you want more shirts, you can put more shirts in, and so on. So and then we'll have the posters. There'll be limited edition posters. There will be a limited release of the official coin, which you may not have. I don't know if you know about it, but if you look at this is the 2018 edition, which was the Suhaili. We have another coin which is for this edition, which has the Joshua on it. They're very limited editions, so there'll be those, and the official poster, and so on. So that will be up very soon. I'd say in the next few weeks. You will have that. It'll be a simple process of putting it on the website, explaining what you want. If you want to know, if you want to go, it'll be like an email. There may be offline. So you've got to send us an email, send us your address. You know it's secure. You know that we're not going to scam you. And that's how it'll work. So it's coming. But it's been a bit of an effort. So and thanks for your patience. It's a real thorn in our side, that one. But anyway, we're trying to sort something. Next one. And John, would Michael be allowed to go ashore to collect water from a natural source? He would, to a degree. Once he's anchored, he could swim, put his survival suit on, grab his jerry can, and sort of swim ashore. And then he can go up to the high water mark. So you can walk along the beach, but you can't go above the high tide mark. Okay, that's in the notice of race. So there could be a creek coming out or something like that, and he could get there and fill up with the container and then get back on his boat and so on. There's all sorts of ramifications with customs, quarantine, immigration, border force, governments and things like that they have to be careful about and work that out somehow, which is quite challenging but not impossible. But yes, theoretically it could be possible. He was talking about anchoring somewhere and just waiting for the rain shadow over the hills and try and catch the rain while the boat's stable, so I'm not sure. Anyway, okay, next one, Caroline. Yeah, any more onboard footage? Yes, it's coming. It's coming very soon. So in the next couple of weeks, you'll see the first lots come out of there. And I think that's it. I think I covered everything, so not much more to say. Jane will turn this off, and we'll see you next time. That was a long one. I don't know how long, but anyway.